Welcome everyone to another of our sessions on AI and archival practice, a series of videos produced under the auspices of ICA's Program Commission and with the very generous support of the National Library and Archives of the UAE. And today I'm very pleased to be joined by one of our ICA project team members, Moises Rockembach. Hi Moises, good to have you with us again.
Hello David, nice to be here. Yeah.
Great. And look, for today's session, we're looking at the final in our series, in fact, which is sort of not looking about the technology so much, but talking about what we need to do as a professional community to maintain our professional knowledge about AI. And for this, we've got three really interesting sessions to listen to. The first is from Lise Jaillant and Giovanni Colavizza, who have done some fascinating research into this area. Another is Richard Arias Hernandez, who is, like you, Moises, who is a collaborator with the Inter Pares Trust AI and has been looking at, his special area of research has been into the professional development of archivists. And he's got some comments. And then Moises, we also had a session with you and with your really interesting research that you've done also in collaboration with Inter Pares AI. So how about if I stop talking for now and we'll just listen to those three sessions and then you and I can come back and have a few reflections. Okay, let's listen to those. Well, hello everyone and welcome to another of our sessions on AI and archival practice. And for this discussion, I'm very pleased to be joined by two leading international researchers into this fascinating area of AI and archival practice. Lise Jaillant from the University of Loughborough, who's led many research projects based in the UK, of course, but internationally, and Giovanni Colavizza from the University of Bologna, specializing in the field of computer science, but also having undertaken research into areas of AI and archives. Thank you and welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Look, perhaps if we kick off straight away with a very general discussion, perhaps starting with you first, Lisa, through all of your research and all of the work that you've been undertaking, where do you see the major impact at the moment of AI in the near term and perhaps the medium term? What's the major impact of AI going to be on the practice of archives?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the question and thank you for the invitation, David. Well, the first thing to say really is that artificial intelligence is no longer a choice. I mean, it's a necessity, for archival institutions and also for users, for researchers such as myself. And as you mentioned, I've been leading several projects, on AI and archives. Those projects have been funded by the HRC, the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK. And I've been working with a wide range of professionals, so, people in libraries, in archives, in museums, but also in governments. And all these institutions face similar problems. I mean, all of them have, problems with exponential increase in digital records. So of course, you cannot manually review those records. That's not feasible. And let me perhaps take an example. I mean, for my project, Lost, I've been working with David Canning, who's the head of digital knowledge and information management. And he has been working with his team to address the digital heap in government. And as you know, the digital heap describes collections of unorganized, unstructured digital documents and information. And these collections are stored outside of official systems of control. So they are hidden, really. And this leads to major problems. You have an increasing liability, compliance risks, and also, of course, increasing costs. So, for example, if there is a public inquiry, record managers and government professionals are asked to provide evidence, requested by the inquiry. And it's often very difficult to find the evidence in this huge amount of records because they're, as we said, they are a bit hidden. They are not stored within official systems. So let me perhaps give a specific example. In the case of the COVID-19 inquiry in the UK, you had several government professionals that admitted having deleted WhatsApp messages, which is, of course, very problematic, right? Because those WhatsApp messages were related to the way governments managed the COVID crisis. Some of them were historically significant and they should have been preserved. And yet they just disappeared, which perhaps, they were deleted because they could lead to embarrassment or even potential liability, for those government officials. So my colleague at the Cabinet Office, David Canning, he mentioned that in one of these heaps, these digital heaps, there were actually 11 million files, and all of these files needed to be reviewed. So that's 11 million files, absolutely huge. And those documents needed to be reviewed because they could either be historic records, so very important records, or not so important, records that should be destroyed. And basically, at the Cabinet Office, they estimated that it would take one person 59 years to read all those documents. And even if they attempted to hire an entire team, with 59 people to complete the task in 1 year, well, the pay bill would be absolutely huge. It would exceed 2 billion pounds. 2 million pounds, I should say, not 2 billion. But anyway, that's a huge sum, of course, and they cannot afford, to pay this kind of money. So to address this problem, well, David and his team, David Canning and his team, applied computational approaches to remove information which was not relevant. So what they call ROT, redundant, outdated, and trivial information. And their starting point was that documents of historical value contain particular patterns of language. So you have keywords, phrases that tend to appear more frequently that in ROT information. So for example, just to give an example here, if you have the word minister, well, it points to high value information. Whereas if you have the phrase Christmas card, well, that could point to ROT information. So they used an approach called the lexicon to aggressively reduce their digital heap. They looked at metadata, they looked at the file names, the file path, and they looked, of course, at the file content as well. So of course, here, that's an example I'm giving you to show that AI can be extremely useful to address this digital heap. Again, it's not a choice; it's a necessity when you have this huge amount of records. But of course, there are also some risks. Nobody wants to be in a situation where machines make decisions on what to keep and what to delete. There is a risk of error. You don't want to delete important records without human oversight. And really, a key point here is that humans need to be kept in the loop. They should lead the technology, and not the other way around. So I hope that answers your question. And perhaps, Giovanni, you wanted to add something here.
Yes, please, Giovanni. I'd be really interested to hear from you on your perspective, and maybe picking up on a few of those themes. Where are the major impacts going to be felt? And if you have any case studies or examples to draw upon, that would also be quite interesting.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you very much, David, for the invitation. And of course, I contend with everything that Lise just said. And to build upon it, we could see AI technologies as an accelerator, right, in every domain. But we're not talking about, a mild 20% acceleration. We are talking about orders of magnitude acceleration, right? So that has all sorts of consequences, and many of these are still unforeseen, and we will figure them out as we go. In the context of the archives, I believe that there is a fundamental acceleration that has started actually before AI, has started with digitization of records, and the usage of information systems more generally. which has and is still facilitating the usage of archives, not only as collections of records, right, with their own logic and organization and context, but instead as data. And that has massive consequences, right? Because on the one hand, it means that we can process data at scale, we can access data at scale, we can accelerate the information extraction and dealing with, for example, backlogs, which is a huge problem for many archives. But on the other hand, we become extremely inclined to access individual atomic information and lose track of the context of the record and of where the record belongs into an archive. So I think that we will have to grapple with this in the archival profession, right? It's still something that it's puts people a bit unease in an uneasy situation, and AI is going to accelerate that big time. So I think this is a fundamental shift that AI is happening into, right? I mean, again, I think it was started before, and AI is extremely accelerating. Now, concretely speaking, in terms of examples of things that are interesting and things that being interesting can also be sometimes problematic. I think picking from my own work, for example, we have been working on helping historical archives making their records available to a broader audience. Now, when we talk about historical archives, and of course here Lise is the expert, much more than me, right? I come in with a technical expertise, but what I understand is that there are all sorts of considerations that have to be made in order to understand what are the target communities, right? What is the target audience, or actually audiences, from the experts, from the scholars, historians, to communities that might have an interest in the information that is contained in these records. So we're talking about widely different audiences with different interests, different ways that they will use and they will approach the archive. And in this respect, AI can help a lot. Right? To give an example, what we can do nowadays is to automatically transcribe handwritten records at scale with very high accuracy. I mean, this is not, of course, 100% accuracy. There are still errors. There are still situations where we cannot use these models, but by far and large, in the last few years, this has become common practice. Meaning that all the investment that has been done in digitizing large record series can now be capitalized upon by also transcribing them. But then what happens, right? So the first thing that you do when you have transcription, or you are inclined to do, is just to put it online with a full text search. And that, that is interesting on the one hand, but then it makes the archive a sort of web, right? Because you give an interface that seems like Google search. But what you actually need are archival records and not web pages. So I leave the audience to think about what can go wrong in that respect, okay? So that is a massive opportunity, but also, it brings new challenges that we need to think about. Further to that, right, because the application of AI can build on top of itself. When we have the full text of the records, we can do more fine-grained information extraction. Right? So how can we provide a better interface that is not just full text search, but, for example, it allows users to search by historical entity, such as real persons, real places, and the like, or faceted search, right, by keyword, by theme or topic. Well, we can do that through, again, automatic information extraction on the full text that we now have. Entity recognition is a technique that, for example, is widely used to that end. And this is, in my opinion, very interesting, and also the opinion of the archivists that we have been working with, because it allows them to work with tools that they are used to, and they are, ideally, they can be much more higher quality, which are finding aids. For example, alphabetical indices of all the persons that are mentioned in different records. So a huge potential. I would say also new questions and challenges, right? Because you see that the more we use AI, the more we digitize, the more we move towards the realm of the web, right, and the realm of data, and we risk losing track of what makes a record a record. But on the other hand, and to look back to what Lise was finishing on, I think we also have an opportunity to really keep control of this methodology, right? So to look at ways not to fully automate a certain task, for example, indexation, but for example, augment it, right? So developing models that are designed to work alongside an expert to greatly enhance the, the scale of the records that they can process, but at the same time, keep that human oversight, that expert oversight, so to guarantee the quality of the results.
Just stay with you for a moment, Giovanni, and hear from you as well, Lise, that just on that topic, Giovanni, in terms of how archivists should think about getting involved in a project. If people watching this are very interested in taking advantage of the technology and achieving some of those outcomes that you both have just gone through, I mean, how accessible is it? And what from your experience looking at various initiatives that institutions and people have undertaken, what do you think determines success or failure when undertaking an initiative using AI? So can we talk about those two things? First, how accessible is this? Is it really expensive? Is it hard to get AI technology and incorporate it into the work of an archives? And what are the success factors? And Giovanni, can we start with you on that?
Yes. Well, so that's a complex question, right? Because there are multiple ways we can look at it. I think we should at least consider the factor of competences and skill building within the community and the practitioners. I think this is a key component to make informed decisions and to also internalize the usage of some of these methodologies without always relying on external contractors, although that's important to develop certain solutions. Then there is another question which has to do with infrastructure, right? So the IT infrastructure that is required in order to use AI and to keep using it, keep up a service that is AI-based for internal purpose or for public-facing applications. And there are multiple ways to go about it. And thirdly, I think there is the question of if, when, and how to collaborate with external partners and external stakeholders. There are many, right from, of course, academia that we are representing here, but also the private sector. I think it's really critical to have the right partners in this endeavor. But I'll start maybe with the first point, right? So internal competencies, because I think everything falls from there, to be honest, right? Because if you don't have that internally, it's very difficult to make the right choices on the other areas. So I think in that respect, nowadays there are really many ways to start experimenting, playing with, and slowly but steadily develop a competence with AI methodologies. Like the barrier is, I wouldn't say it's very low, but it's lowering by the day. And starting to use these methods, maybe do a summer school, maybe take a 6-month course, maybe take some time to develop foundational skills, has become really accessible. There are many tools. There are entire communities that are tools that are open source, that can be reused, that can be picked up. There is a thriving community that works on AI for the LAM sector, so library, archives, and museums. So I think it's really a good time to go in that direction. I can later share a few pointers to a few resources that people can take a look at. From the perspective of a practitioner, like I'm like Lise, we also teach the university, so we always think about what to teach to our students and what kind of competencies, theoretical, methodological, and practical they should have in order to be well equipped for the future in this domain. I think that there are really areas that are extremely interesting for a newly trained archivist to go into. And I'll just name a few. Okay, so one is the domain of bringing curatorial competencies to the creation of data sets that are meant to be used for machine learning. So data sets that are meant to be used for training models or evaluating the performance of a model. Because there, this is not something that comes from the machine learning community, right? And they are increasingly becoming aware that there are significant limitations on having an approach that essentially boils down to like take everything that there is available. A shift is happening nowadays whereby, on the one hand, this approach, so take everything that you have, is used by few companies that have the resources to train these very large models, large language models or multimodal models that are then foundational to any other application in AI. But at the same time, those many other applications, including those that I mentioned before in an archival scenario, really benefit from having high quality, well-curated data sets that can steer, that can, we say, fine-tune a larger model in the direction of the specific task that is done. So that really requires proper competencies that are domain-specific, design of the task, good documentation, selection of examples, and this really can come from the archival community. I'm really convinced that this is a key contribution that archivists should make in the present and in the future. This is particularly important for companies, right? So this is also why I really think it's important to mention it, because nowadays I also work with companies. I have my own companies, and what we now have to do is to have our internal benchmarks to evaluate on the tasks that we care about the large models that are released pretty much every day, right? Because we need to be aware when we need to shift, when we need to move to a new model because it is performing better. And we cannot rely on published benchmarks because those are often too generic or they are just obsolete by now. So there again, this is a critical asset that companies are developing, and I think archivists can really help in that direction. The other point that I think archivists should be really on top on is the regulatory environment. Now, this is something that practitioners in machine learning, speaking of myself as well as an engineer, I really don't want to, I mean, I have to, but I really don't want to know that stuff. I just want to be told what I have to do. What is the framework that I need to be into, right? So what I need to abide to in terms of regulatory environment. And in particular, this nowadays is still very fluid. So it's important that it is forward-looking, right? So that someone that comes from the archival community would be on top of the debates and developments of the regulatory environment, for example, on something that will be extremely critical in the future, such as what kind of data or metadata, let's say, we need to generate when we use AI. In terms of provenance, in terms of, having somewhere in the system all the trail of documentation that comes before, during, and after a certain decision or task was done using an AI model. So these are just two examples. There are more, but I think they are really critical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think when we think about archives, digital archives, and personal data, that's absolutely central, right? Giovanni mentions the regulations, the legal frameworks. That's something to be aware of course. But there are many technologies at the moment that could be helpful, to manage our archival collection that includes some personal data. And I'm thinking of, an article that we published as part of the Aeolian special issue in Journal of Computing and Cultural Heritage. So the special issue was published earlier this year. I can share the link with you later on. But it's an article by Victoria Lemieux and John Werner. And basically, they talk about privacy-enhancing technologies, so PETs. And these technologies could be applied to digital archives with personal data. They are, of course, emerging technologies, but really they rest on the assumption that a body of document is confidential or private and must remain so. So that's very much, the starting point. So of course, it seems quite counterintuitive to apply those technologies to make archives more accessible. But in fact, they are very useful to allow analysis of archival documents without the need to make them more open. So that's very important. And in the article, they give several examples, like using synthetic data. Synthetic data can be a valuable tool in the training of AI, of course, when the privacy of the data needs to be preserved. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention, privacy enhancing technologies. I think, archivists should be aware of this, and many of them, of course, are already aware of this. The second point I wanted to mention is, of course, generative AI, Gen AI. We're all familiar with ChatGPT now, and this is, of course, an extremely important development for archivists and other professionals. So what I would say really is that we all know now that ChatGPT and other tools do not really work well on historical text, because they have been largely trained using contemporary data. So I think archivists really have something to bring to the conversation to make those tools better. And that's something that Giovanni mentioned as well. Collaboration is really key here. So it's really important to develop better generative AI tools, and to develop those better Gen AI tools, you need collaborations, collaborations between archivists, humanities scholars, people like myself, and also people like Giovanni, computer scientists, data scientists. So that's very central here. Another very exciting development is the application of generative AI to visual archives. So not only to text, but also to visual archives. And earlier this year, Google announced the launch of Ask Photos. So Ask Photos is an experimental add-on feature. It relies on Gemini, Google's tool, Gen AI tool. So basically the way it works, instead of scrolling down through pages on Google Photos or, using keywords, users will just ask a question, to the tool using natural language, which, seems really great and could be, it could be applied to historical visual archives as well, and perhaps, modified to take it into account the unique features of those historical collections. So I think there are so many, very exciting developments, and it's important to be part of the conversation, really.
That's for sure. And look, maybe we could finish on this theme. Actually, we've been touching on how people can expand their knowledge and understanding of AI, and really strong messages coming through from both of you in the opportunities to collaborate. So for archivists to start collaborating with computer scientists, with academia, etc. Can you distill that down for me from each of you? Perhaps we start with you, Lise, and then Giovanni. Just some key messages that you would have for perhaps even mid-career, early career people watching these videos. How should they be thinking about maintaining their professional understanding of AI, and what should they be doing about developing their own skills and expertise to stay a part of this conversation and perhaps even stay ahead of this emerging technology?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that the first thing I would say is that you cannot do it on your own. It's such a huge topic, artificial intelligence, that it's important to network, to meet other people. And I think, all my projects really have been, the objective has been to bring people together, archivists, historians, computer scientists, government professionals. So that was really central. So in terms of practical advice, I would say keeping informed. So, you could join listservs as part of the Aeolian project and the Luster project. We have, mailing listservs that you can join. It's a good way to keep, in touch with the scholarly community, for example, we have an edited collection that's going to be published later on this year as part of the Aeolian project. We also have a special issue in Aryan Society, which is going to be published in later this year as well. So I think, sometimes people outside academia might say, okay, it's not relevant for a practitioner, but I think many of these articles, are published are written by archivists and, for an audience of, GLAM sector professionals. So I think it could be definitely relevant for, ICA members and people interested in those topics. And yeah, I know that you have a resource that you're going to circulate later on, David, with references, and I would be happy to share some practical suggestions here of readings, relevant topics that could be interesting to ICA members.
Thank you. No, that would be great. And Giovanni, as a computer scientist looking into the archival profession, what advice would you have for us?
Right. So on top of what Lise and I were already saying, I would strongly agree with Lise on the importance of collaboration. So I would invite everyone to, if they are in such a position, to engage with initiating a collaboration with people in academia, such as us or others, whoever is working in your field, in your country, on this, or with companies. Starts to be now an interesting ecosystem of usually small to mid-sized companies that are, it's very nice to work with, and they have a lot of expertise. And I think you can consider doing a pilot project, for example, right? It can be more research project, can be more implementation project. And that is extremely important to build internal capacity and to start, engaging with this kind of questions. And then you can take it from there and scale it up. In terms of resources, and to complement again what Lise was saying, so for a bit more the perspective of computer science, and to give easy ways to get into this community, I would advise, and of course I will share with you, David, this link. So there is a very nice curated list of resources that is called Awesome AI for LAM, so AI for libraries, archives, and museums, which contains learning resources, tools, data sets, but also venues for publications, communities, and the like. I would suggest that people that are interested can take a look, and sorry for the self-plug, to a survey paper that we have published a couple of years ago, so just before the ChatGPT shift, which I think is useful to get an idea of everything that just came before that, which is still quite relevant. That is called Archives and AI, an overview of current debates and future perspectives. And lastly, I suggest to start following some people on socials, and one that I really think is a good, really good way to get into this community is Daniel Van Strien. I'll send you the link of his personal page, and he posts across pretty much all the professional social media, so Hugging Face, LinkedIn, X, and Mastodon, and he's the librarian in residence at Hugging Face. Hugging Face is one of the most important companies that are active in the machine learning and AI world, and it's a very interesting. I think that they have a librarian in residence, and his role is really to work to animate this community, so AI for LAM. So I think people will really find it interesting.
Well, look, thank you very much, both of you. This has been a great discussion, a great opening up of doors and insights into where AI is going to take our profession. And importantly for me, you've given some really great advice on how all of us can actually not just be spectators, but actually lean in and get involved and be a part of this revolution. And as you said, Lise, it's not an option anymore. This is inevitable. It's already with us, this revolution. And I think that's a very strong message as well, that anybody that considers themselves to be a professional archivist really has got a responsibility now to understand this technology, where it's going, and be a part of it. So thank you both so very much. I will be very interested in picking up on those tips you've given us and putting those pointers in the resources that we'll publish along with these. So once again, it's just for me to say thank you both very much for your time.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
My
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another of our sessions on archives and artificial intelligence. And for this session, I'm very pleased to be joined by Richard Arias Hernandez from University of British Columbia, and also working with Interpares Trust AI. Welcome, Richard. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, David.
Look, maybe to start, you could perhaps give us a brief introduction to yourself, but also very interested to hear some of the work you're doing with Interpares.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to acknowledge that I'm joining you from the traditional, unceded, ancestral territories of the Musqueam people here in what we now call Vancouver, British Columbia. Been living here for about 12 years now. And I am very appreciative of the fact that they let me live and enjoy this place and work here. I am an assistant professor at the University of British Columbia, also here in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I am associated to Interpares, which is a long project. It has more than 25 years in its history. And now it is in its fifth stage of development. And over the years, Interpares, as many people have heard or would know about it, they have been focusing on how technologies affect our ways of understanding and conceptualizing and processing archives. So it's not only the theory, but also the practices. Having in mind that authenticity, integrity, and trustworthiness are key for the profession and needs to be maintained regardless of technology changes. So that has gone through multiple iterations of electronic records, of archives in the cloud, and in this latest iteration, we are in what we call now Interpares Trust AI, in which our focus is artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how we can ensure that our records are stored and kept and processed and maintained on the same precepts of authenticity, integrity, and trustworthiness. And I'm very honored to have joined Interpares for the last two iterations, stage 4 and now stage 5. Is an amazing group of colleagues. I had the pleasure to work alongside Luciana Durante for pretty much all the time that I've been at UBC. She just recently retired, but she's still spearheading the project along with my other colleague, Mohamed Abdul Magil. And it's interesting how they're bringing, the archival science expertise and the computer science expertise, and we are putting these two disciplines to talk to each other. So it's been a process of learning during the last 3 years, a little bit bumpy at the start, but we got there, and we are now being able to collaborate, work on case studies. More than 40 case studies are being developed as we speak that involve archives, that involve computer scientists, and Interpares try to mix expertises in working teams. So that's something that we're currently producing. And there's more than 200 researchers and collaborators involved all around the world in every continent. So it's a great endeavor, and I'm very appreciative that I participate in it.
Look, it is, and it's great to hear that summary of Interpares and the works going on. The people, Luciana and the whole team behind Interpares, are a very influential member of the broader ICA community as well, and the archival profession. So now it's great to have you on board with us today, Richard, to talk about this work. And look, what we're very interested in, the sessions that we're conducting as part of this particular exercise is to help our members in the ICA think about their own professional development with the advent of AI. We're very familiar with technology, of course. We've been using technology for many, many decades. So it's not an issue where anyone's being afraid of technology or risk averse, but it's moving so very quickly. AI technology is moving so very quickly. And from someone like yourself who's right in the middle of this, or in fact, right at the leading edge of research into this area, what areas of AI technology do you think are moving very quickly? And how do you think that an archivist should be looking after their own professional development to stay ahead of the game and to get the most possible out of AI technology for the management of archives?
This is the research that I've been conducting in Interpares for the last 3 years, and it started by surveying cases of archivists who have been involved with experimenting with machine learning technologies. Most of these technologies were entity name recognition or natural language processing, sometimes computer vision. So I was very interested to know how an archivist with pretty much no background in these technologies start experimenting with this and what kind of learning they start developing on their own. We found when we conducted the first lead review, that was 2021, we found about 6 case studies, and we identified the people who were involved there. They were published, so it was public knowledge. We identified the archivists and researchers and collaborators that were involved. We contacted them and invited them to interviews. 10 of them responded, and we conducted deep interviews on what they consider were key competencies, what they considered they needed to learn in terms of knowledge or skills they needed to develop in order to apply machine learning for the processing of records. We had archivists, we had records managers in those interviews. And it was very interesting to extract so many different kind of areas of knowledge. And the basic ones were on obviously archival principles, artificial intelligence and machine learning modules, data science, critical AI and critical machine learning. And there were a few areas that were more related to collaboration, working with others. Several of these experiments happen in work context in which the archivist collaborates with the IT person, or they have the advantage to be at a university and they may have the opportunity to work with a student who could be hired for a few months and that brings the expertise in machine learning. So collaboration tended to be key. So those were the areas that I found in this research to be the more pressing and used at this point. However, the caveat of these studies is that they were conducted at a very early stage of the latest development of AI. So obviously, for people to get into the nuts and bolts, they needed to deal with the coding, with the programming, and that was pretty commonly found among the interviews as a competency. However, since we started, a lot of developments have happened. As you said, this is a quick moving target. And several applications that are used in the archival profession. For example, Preservica has introduced modules with machine learning and AI. Archimatica is researching on that. There's Record Point that is also introduced machine learning. So what we're seeing in time, during this past few years, moving really quickly, is that industry is offering the same machine learning techniques and models embedded within their existing applications. So they're also making it into the archives and the records management offices prepackaged And in those situations, people don't need to deal directly with the code or with the programming. So the skills and the competencies that they require, that they need at that point are of a different level, more about understanding interface.
Maybe you could unpack that. I mean, this is good news, right? That we don't need to understand computer code or the nuts and bolts. Well, we don't need to be practitioners in computer coding and the nuts and bolts, as you say. But yeah, I'm just very interested in that point that you finished on there, that so therefore we do need to raise our level of thinking and understand the principles involved. And so, yeah, what are some of those principles we need to be considering when using these newer, more sophisticated software tools?
Right. It's very contextual, I would say. I wouldn't create like generalized principle or think about that, because in my conversation with the archivists and the interviews, and when I'm presenting this work and get the feedback, what I'm encountering is that different archives and records management offices in different countries are in different places in a spectrum, in which some of those, for example, are not willing or able to use some of the products offered by industry because they need to put records on the cloud because of legal restrictions or conditions. So they want to be involved with machine learning. They need to develop something in-house from scratch. So obviously they're going to be in a spectrum of competencies that is going to be absolutely different than those that could actually use tools such as Microsoft Azure AI and put records on the cloud in the United States, right? Because of, let's say, external constraints or constraints coming from the environment, legal environment, especially of these situations. So it's very circumstantial, and people just adapt to that. What I have seen is that people display these competencies wherever they are from, and they adapt. So some archivists that need to develop the code from scratch, they start experimenting, learning about high level entry way of understanding code, tinkering and manipulating code for machine learning, and then using their own data, evaluating the results, and then getting comfortable with it, right? Obviously. But in the other side is the one that don't need to go there because they already can use the tools and they don't have the restrictions that other archivists or records managers may have, and they can just be familiar with the application. But there's always the concern and the need to evaluate the results. So I was going to say that's something that is, let's say, I'm going to say general, but let's say it's recurrently I hear about evaluating the results of the models. So that's a key competency that I don't see changes regardless the kind of situations or context. Being critical about how to use the AI, where and when to use the AI, how to evaluate the results, and being critical about the data that trains the model, how the models get trained, how these models may be used in decision making. That's a conversation that is starting to happen in also in archives. When do we use, for example, generative AI to drive decisions in the archives, which is very problematic because it's related to accountability within the archives. So all of these conversations seem to be all across, right? It doesn't matter in what side of the spectrum you are, they seem to be there.
Look, that's fascinating. And how much of your research has been published? Is it yeah. So tell our listeners and viewers how they might be able to tap into some of this research, or indeed and stay in touch with current developments.
Yeah, so our first paper in the development competencies is going to be published in October. It got accepted for ACIST 2024, which is going to be in Calgary in October. So it's not going to be published until then, but happy to share the preprint. And there's going to be more conceptual developments happening later. And obviously, and the whole reason for me to go into all of this trouble of asking people is because I like to work on professional development from the perspective of professionals. You can always develop, training for professionals from a theoretical perspective, academic perspective, industry perspective. but the way that I approach it is more from the needs of the professionals in the archives and records management offices. So that's why I took the time and the work to ask the people who actually have done it and have gotten that experience in the ground. And from that point on, we develop a body of knowledge within the areas that I just mentioned, like what are the topics, what are the skills. And we're developing now modules that Interpares Trust AI are going to be making available online and for free starting next year. And at least going to be releasing 2 or 3 modules by the end of 2025. So that's going to be, that's why I consider publication. There's the more theoretical side, that's the paper, and there will be more discussions that are happening, because at the theoretical level, what I'm telling you about the spectrum and the ways how competencies change as soon as technology changes, and this technology is moving so quickly. So there's not going to be anything such as a fixed competency other than being critical. I think that's the common denominator. That probably is not going to change, but the question is going to be critical about what? Because the technology is changing so quickly that developing skills for a specific technology is going to be outdated in 6-8 months at this point, when talking about AI and ML. So those theoretical conversations, I think those are the ones that you're going to find in the papers that we're going to be publishing. Yeah.
Well, look, that's fascinating, and thank you so much for giving us those insights. And importantly, you know, that last point you finished on about how quickly this is all moving, I think is a really important one to bear in mind. But having said that, though, I think the more work that we invest in research, in informing ourselves about these developments and taking advantage of the resources that are available, such as the ones you've been producing with Interpares Trust AI, I think we can continue to develop our skills and our understanding of this technology and make the most of it, and hopefully not repeat the mistakes of others, and also learn from the success of others as well. So look, this has been a really, really fascinating, very interesting conversation, Richard. Thank you so much for your time, and it's been of great assistance. Thank you.
David, thank you for inviting me.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another of our sessions on artificial intelligence and archival practice. And for this conversation, I'm actually joined by a member of our project team, Moises Rockembach, who, as well as being on the ICA project team producing these videos, is also undertaken some very relevant and interesting research through your involvement, Moises, on the Interpares AI Trust. So Moises, hello and welcome. But perhaps you could kick off, just tell us a little bit about the research that you've undertaken.
So thank you for that, David. Just a little introduction. I'm professor in the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Coimbra in Portugal, and where I teach and conduct a research in information science program. And in my academic research interests involve archival studies, information science, and digital humanities. And now I'm lead a research team related to AI literacy studies for record managers and archivists in Interpares Trust AI project at the University of British Columbia in Canada. This project, Interpares Trust AI, is an international project which involves several countries. I have some numbers here just to give the scale of this project. So we have around 50 approved studies being developed. We currently have 82 partners organizations, over 200 individual researchers. We also have 9 partners in 5 continents, 120 co-applicants, and 120 collaborators, and 60 graduate research assistants. So as you can see, it's a project that covers many organizations and people. My research involves working with professionals to identify the main challenges and barriers in the adoption of artificial intelligence solutions with organizations.
Everyone's going to be really interested to find out more about the specific field of research that you undertook. What was it you're investigating, and what have you discovered?
Yes, so one of our primary questions, it was how can technology such artificial intelligence impact our field? So we see techniques like machine learning or natural language process including present our daily life. So we use ChatGPT, but before that you use Siri or Alexa. So it's not something new in your daily lives. But since the launch of ChatGPT, we have a new uses for AI. So we have some interesting discovered in that field. We apply a survey to record managers and archivists, asking first what they think about the main barriers to adopt AI solutions. So we had different answers, and we try to classify all these answers in 5 main categories. And with those 5 main categories, we can explain the main reasons why they not yet adopt AI solutions in archives. So first of all, lack of knowledge or competencies. So this was mentioned by many record managers, and this means that they see they need update their skills or competences in AI. So many of them, they work with tech, they have digital literacy. But when we're talking about AI, we have new tools, we have new approaches. When we interact with LLM models, for example, we need to know how to address, how to make questions, and how to get the outputs. So this is one thing. The second thing, some of them, they don't have digital documents enough to use AI solutions. So means to implement AI solutions, you need a certain volume of documents to train the model. And this can be also a barrier. They don't see the need now because they don't have these digital documents enough to apply AI solutions. So third, lack of reliable technologies. Because this is also, I think, we see when we use tools such as ChatGPT and Gemini or all the Gen AI, that is, for example, hallucinations. So the output doesn't correspond reliable answers. So you cannot just copy and paste, let's say. You need to have this critical thinking to evaluate all the output. So lack of reliable technologies, we have some methods that are applying on that, developed by now, such as train with your own data. So then you can have a model more fine-tuning. Yeah. And so the fourth main reason is that those AI solutions are not integrated into management systems. So many of them point that when these AI solutions will be integrated to these management systems, then they are allowed to use. So this is also a matter of accountability, responsibility, and governance. That's an important thing for many reasons, and can be to ally to the technology solutions adopted by those organizations, or also when they have a sensitive data, is also a matter to keep under control. And the fifth and last main reason is a lack of economy and human resources. So sometimes archives and the sectors that work with record management, they don't have enough economic and human resources, and this is an important barrier.
Well, that's really interesting, and there are some that I'm not surprised about. I mean, the lack of economy and the human resources, for example, I had imagined that would be something of a barrier, but I suppose I hadn't really thought about reliable technology as a barrier. And again, just drilling down on that a bit. So this is that we cannot rely on the outputs of that technology. Is that right? So that, often I hear when I read the literature, it's about hallucinations, that AI can give a very convincing answer, which is quite wrong. So is that the main issue there in terms of reliability?
Yes, I can bring some statistics about that. Yeah. So there's the last Microsoft Worker Trend Report from this year. It's a Microsoft LinkedIn report, and they point some important statistics about the use of AI of professionals. So from all areas, not specific about the record management and archivists, but we can apply also in that field. Yeah, of course. So around 52% of professionals are hesitant to disclosure the use of AI for important tasks. So around the same number, fear it could make them seem replaceable. Yes. So that's the fear about AI replace our jobs. Even so, around 75% of professionals stated that they are using AI in work.
Okay.
So, and then we have these two new phenomena happen. So one where they are use their own tools instead of the ones provided by the company. And they call these new phenomena, bring your own artificial intelligence. That's one thing. It's important to address because it means they are using other tools that are not that one provided by the institution. And another where they use software apps, devices, or tech services without the company's or IT department's approval or knowledge. And that they call shadow IT.
Yes.
So imagine someone that is use ChatGPT to do classification or to do some archival functions, and then with no approval from IT, and well, there's some risks involved if you use those tools without all the analysis. And then this brings us to the ethical part.
Yes.
So ethical approach.
And so clearly, to improve the literacy of archivists and records managers, I guess, would you agree that we should be addressing all 5 of these barriers in parallel? Is it possible to peel off 1 or 2 barriers and really focus on that? Or do you think it really needs a systemic, strategic approach to improve AI literacy?
Yeah, this is a good question because as we used to say, each archive has their own context, and because each organization has their own context, so need to assess that. At the same time, that 5 main reasons I think is very common to happen, and is what our survey point also. So many of the answers say that I cannot put these in order because the answers were more or less the same proportion. But I could say lack of economic and human resources is one big thing, because it's not just for AI, sometimes it's for also digital resources as well, or clouds, or computing. Yeah? So one thing is that at the same time, if we think about solutions to that reason, so how can we overcome these barriers? So I would say that one is to improve the skills and competence in AI. Also because it's not just tech competences, it's also about the critical thinking, it's also about the relation between AI literacy and archival literacy. Because we need to improve the quality of data. This is one big thing that happened now. If we put data that doesn't have quality, we have a problem in the output. So this will be something that we need to approach more and more. And at the same time, if we don't have the human resource and the economic resource, maybe thinking shared infrastructures. And one important thing is also think about community of practices, because of these, I think, can improve also the learn. That's an important thing for us, and specifically for this project.
And similarly, the lack of digitized documents is also a really interesting finding as well, because again, it's a bit like the technology and the economic and human resources. If you haven't been able to digitize your collection, then you don't have the raw materials to work with, and so you're left with using AI on information that has been digitized or is publicly available, which doesn't really, help you manage your collection that much. And it's also an expensive proposal. Often to digitize the collection will cost quite a bit of money, which I also think is a very interesting finding, because often many of us leap to the conclusion that it's all about the technology and we forget about the collection. I think that's a really important message to deliver.
Yes, I agree totally. I could say that is a moving from these the document paradigm to the data-driven paradigm to the AI paradigm or AI-driven paradigm. So we need to do these steps. We need to go to the data. We need to transform all these in data to feed the AI model. So we need to do these steps. It's impossible to avoid that.
Yes. And I think your research is very valuable in perhaps providing our viewers who are interested in adopting AI, those 5 areas would be a very good starting point to prepare a strategy for developing and adapting AI. I mean, would you agree there's a basis there for a strategic plan?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I could say as example also, talking about that, is you see many contexts about machine learning applications. So some organizations, they open a challenge that you can apply also as academic or a practitioner or a citizen. So you bring all community together to propose solutions, and this is also a matter of bring these human resources together to develop a solution for some of those problems. So they are doing these in many platforms, and maybe the archival field could do something related also. So like find a solution in the community.
I'm thinking with our ICA hat on here as well, that maybe there's a role for an organization like the ICA, which has, after all, a certain convening power to bring parties from very well-resourced countries together with less resourced countries to maybe have something more like a global effort or a coordinated effort to assist one another to overcome these barriers?
Yeah, there are many people interested in AI now, and is the trend topic now. So people are interested to know more, to learn more, and they feel they must learn because it's the technology that is changing everything. You can see also from a skeptical point of view, and I think is important also. So it's not solution that you solve everything in your organization. You need the human factor here that to work together with AI. So I think the role that could be developed by ICA would be mainly try to build in a community of practices. Because as an international organization and that bring all these practitioners together can be this place to share knowledge, experience, and best practices. I think that would be great, and I think we as professors, researchers, practitioners, we are happy to help with that also as a community.
Yeah. No, look, I think that sounds great. And I think that research into AI literacy, and in particular the barriers, I think does form a very useful framework. Well, first of all, it gives us a very good insight as to where the problems are that need to be solved as a profession. And I come back to that point. I think it provides a very good framework to develop a program to overcome those barriers. And I hope we can find some way to cooperate, across our international community to actually overcome those barriers. And so finally, your research then with the Inter Pares Trust AI, you publish the outcomes of this research. Are there resources that people might be able to find through the outputs of Inter Pares Trust that would provide further reading and research for people?
Yeah, we have in the website Inter Pares Trust AI, we have the outputs there. So you can find presentations that we gave and some papers. So all these publications are published there by now.
That's fantastic. Well, look, thank you, Moises. That's been a really good insight into what we need to do as a profession to actually get on top of this game, and perhaps what we need to do as a community to cooperate with one another. And finally, congratulations and thank you and all of your colleagues in Inter Pares Trust AI for this fantastic body of research that is being done and is being made freely available. It's very generous that you're sharing that research with the broader community. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, 3 really interesting discussions on the broad range of things that we should be thinking about to maintain our professional knowledge, including your own research, Moises, which is, again, really, really interesting. And perhaps we can return briefly to that in just a moment. But first to you, Moises, what are your reflections perhaps on the other 2 sessions that we just had?
Well, the presentations was amazing. We can see from our colleagues that staying up to date on the latest innovations is essential for professionals. So about specifically about Inter Pares Trust AI, over the past 3 years, the project was to highlight several key concepts that archivists are faced in adopting AI. So these include gaps in knowledge and skills, insufficiently digitized records, unreliable AI technologies, also integration difficulties in existing systems, and limited resources. So all those topics are related to the barriers that archivists and record managers are face on adopt AI technologies.
Yeah, no, I think it was. And look, your research for me, I think, did bring a lot of the issues that Lisa, Giovanni, and Richard brought to bear. I thought Lisa, her point, I think at the beginning there about look, AI is inevitable now. It's not a choice that we need to make. It's a necessity to get engaged, to start understanding it. So there was that real drive there. I think, when Giovanni was talking in terms of that the rise of technology generally in the field of AI, in the field of archives, I should say, has meant that many of us are treating archives more like data than records. And he was giving us, I think, something of a warning that you can't forget about context when you are applying AI as a very powerful tool to archives. They can't just be chewed up like data. They have to be really thought through carefully in terms of their context. And one of our other sessions in this series on description, archival description, we explored that in some detail, I think, in a very interesting way. And then, and then Richard's conversation as well about, I thought it was very interesting that he was saying, and I'd be interested in your views on this as well, Moises, that, Richard was saying that if you are in a situation where you can use a third-party provider, a cloud service provider, then you don't have to worry about the nuts and bolts of AI. And in fact, many like Record Point and Preservica, I think were also mentioned, they have these functions built in. But if you work in the national archives, you're not allowed to use third-party cloud providers because the data is nationally sensitive. And so you have to learn at least some of the nuts and bolts or partner, with an expert. And I don't know, that was quite interesting in the direction he was taking us about how to advance your professional development.
Yeah. In some case, you need to develop your own AI tool. So when you have the sensitive data, it's problematic to use a third-party tool.
Yes. And on that, I was also very interested in Giovanni Colavizza in particular pointed us towards a site which I'd not been aware of, Hugging Face, which I'm sure you're very well aware of, Moises, but Hugging Face, which is a treasure trove of tools and resources that we can all access and use with great effect, I think, to use to apply AI. Which brings me back to the point you made in your research about if there's a tension here that if we get these third-party tools and bring them into our environment, we have this, you called it shadow IT, I think, that, we start to develop. Yes. So I think really important messages in those sessions that I think you would agree, we have to navigate our way through this. We have to overcome these barriers that you've specified for us and somehow take advantage of all these tools that are available now.
Yes, for example, some institutions, they don't have resources to develop their own AI tools, so they need to use third parties tools. And as we see in also those presentations, we have many possibilities. However, the archivists, the record managers, they need to have AI knowledge in the fundamentals, I mean. So you cannot just adopt with no knowledge about that. So it's something that we need go through upskill or reskills to understand better the technologies. This is already proven. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point to finish on, Moises, an excellent point. So thank you very much for that. Look, for our viewers, we'll put the references and the links up on the screen at the end of this video, and we'll also have those references and resources available through our YouTube channel and on the ICA resource page. So once again, Moises, thank you so much for joining me just to wrap up that session. Thanks to our speakers, to Lise Jaillant, Giovanni Colavizza, Richard Arias Hernandez, and of course for your research, Moises, that you did as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.